Hello and welcome to Rule of Three's video review for Resident Evil Revelations 2 for everything but the Wii U. So this is the follow-up to Resident Evil Revelations, although the plot is very thinly connected, although similar gameplay mechanics are in, which is why it gets Revelations on the title, in my opinion. And it's like I said, Resident Evil Revelations, in my opinion, was the better Resident Evil out of the last few, at least the closest one to going back to Resident Evil's roots. And Revelations 2 had me worried for a while, just because every time I heard something about it, it seemed like they were trying to shift focus back to where kind of Resident Evil 5 was, 5 and 6, which went a little too far into the action category to be Resident Evil and just became kind of horror action games. Resident Evil Revelations 2, however, did not do that, and is surprisingly good, although it does still have some flaws, and I blame kind of the episodic format of the game, as well as I think it's trying to please both the action crowd and the survival horror crowd.
Oh, God. What is this place?
So the story for Resident Evil Revelations takes place in between 5 and 6 based on conversations and kind of what's going on, because they do mention stuff that's happened in 5, but it doesn't seem like Resident Evil 6 has happened yet. Anyway, you follow two sets of characters. The first grouping is Claire and Mora, who are working for a group named TerraSave. They're at a company party, and they get kidnapped by an unknown group, taken to an island where they find out they've been injected with a new virus to where if their fear hormones gets too high, they will mutate into a new form of zombie monster thing, very similar to the Ouroboros, which is brought up in this game. Anyway, they're trying to survive and find a way off the island, as well as figuring out the mystery of who the Overseer is, who's kind of controlling everything. The other group is Barry and Natalia. Barry comes to the island after receiving a distress call from Mora. Takes place, and he meets up with a girl named Natalia, who's a little girl on the island who's kind of mysterious and seems to be able to survive and sense the monsters on the island as well. Their storyline actually takes place, I'm guessing, they don't really give a time frame. I think it's about a week or so after the events of the Claire and Mora storyline. So Barry's not only trying to find Claire and Mora, but he's trying to figure out what happened before he got there. The storyline is actually really good. It's a lot better than I think 5s and 6s were. It also ties up a lot of kind of interesting plot points that were brought up in 5 at the very end, but not in Resident Evil 6, and ties those up nicely, as well as some of the loose ends from Revelations 2 and what's going on, or Revelations 1, and what's going on with certain organizations that were brought up in that. So it's one of the better storylines. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to continue going through each chapter. The pacing, I thought, was done fairly well, other than there's some gameplay things, but I'll talk about that later. I just generally wanted to find out, more and more about what was going on, and especially, who the antagonist is, what their goals were, and how they were tied to the larger picture of things. And it was really, really nicely done.
I'm here, baby. Please be alive.
Gameplay is where I think the episodic aspect of the game comes in and kind of hurts it a little bit. There's also a couple other things I think hurt this game a little more than I would have liked it to. So first off, let's get into the character gameplay. So as I said earlier, you play as two sets of characters. Both sets play somewhat similar but have distinct differences. The similarities are one person can attack and is able to use guns. The other person is more of support and can do kind of special abilities. Claire and Barry are the gun people, so they play the closest to Leon and Chris from Resident Evil 4 or 5 time period, or kind of gameplay of shooting. Whereas Mora and Natalia are support and cannot use guns, but usually have a melee weapon and some type of support ability. The melee weapons tend to be a little weaker, although Mora is able to do if you can knock the enemy on the ground, she can do a finisher where Natalia can't. She's just a pure stunner. At least from what I know, I never was able to do Mora's or Natalia's special because she has to have a brick, and bricks break. But anyway, going back to the gameplay differences, the differences are really in the support characters. Natalia is able to sense the enemies around her. So you can crouch and you'll highlight kind of whether an enemy sees you, where their weak spots are, as well as, so that way you can sneak around with Barry and do a stealth kill. She's also able to crawl through small areas, and she can point to objects in the environment. Mora, on the other hand, has a flashlight that she's able to use to stun enemies, has the crowbar which has the finisher on it, and she's also able to break boards off doors, and is able also to use her flashlight to find hidden items in the environment. Both characters can't shoot and never can. That I really liked about this game is I like having only one character being able to do something where the other characters there pretty much for support. It's kind of like those sections in Resident Evil 4 with Leon and Ashley, except Ashley's able to do stuff, not a whole lot, but she's able, you can control her and have her be useful. And that's kind of what it felt like, is you more or less had to protect the support character while she tried to support you to make your life a little easier. The other aspect about this that I liked is because only one character can shoot, they were able to limit your ammo pretty easily, and you have to conserve ammo, which I'm glad is back from Revelations, because that's what I really liked about that is the fact that you can and most likely will run out of ammo at some point and have to rely on kind of support and melee kills. So, yay, I was worried about that, especially when they announced co-op. But that's unaffected. Now, what is affected is, I think, but at least the episodic portion is kind of how the game breaks down. Is chapters 1, 2, and 4 pretty similar and play very smart, whereas episode 3 is very different. I think kind of has some aspects of it that I wish ran through the entire game, and in my opinion, it hurts it a little more. And that is the inclusion of puzzles. There's only one section of this game that has puzzles, and those puzzles, while good, I wish were throughout the rest of the game. And it's really sad to see that they just went, we'll put puzzles and we'll just make it a chapter. Because, like I said, having done that chapter, I really enjoyed those puzzles. I'm like, why didn't they put puzzles in the other part? And it's just weird, and it really takes out, it takes you out of what they were doing in the previous chapters. The other thing they do in that chapter is there is an escape scene. And like I said, if that was just in the chapter without the puzzles and, they did that, that would have been fine because, it's kind of a climactic part of the game. But because you have the puzzles and that and some new water mechanics, and they just added a lot of one-touch stuff into one chapter, it just felt really off. And like I said, a lot of that stuff, at least the puzzles, why didn't they put more puzzles in the game? And I don't know why they didn't. But I did really enjoy the puzzles in episode 3. But like I said, should have done more with that. Other kind of downers were the environments were kind of lame. They were all very, very similar, all very cliche, and they didn't. I don't think set up the atmosphere as well as Revelations 1 did. Whereas kind of a cool environment where you're on this giant ship that has different rooms. Whereas this game, everything looked the same no matter where you were. The other thing that I didn't care about this was the enemy design. Is they all looked way too similar to kind of Ouroboros monsters from 5. Whereas, once going back to Revelations 1, there were some very cool enemy designs because it was more of a water theme thing going on with some of those monsters. Whereas 2, they just seemed to do what they did with 5 and 6's monsters. Is just kind of, make their skin all peely. Usually have like a glowing spot on their body, and that was it. As well as the bosses and bigger enemies were just kind of meh. And one was kind of a ripoff of Pyramid Head. So that was kind of a really big disappointment because I don't know, it was just kind of lame. There's only really one interesting design they had in this, which is the invisible enemy that you have to deal with as Barry. And that was really the only cool enemy that I came across, at least design-wise. Everything else just looked kind of bleh. Other things that I think hurt the game are... what was it? Combining is... The way you combine items in this game is weird, and the mixtures are kind of weird. There's only a couple. Like, there's some one-off that you can only use with 5 items, and I kind of wish you could do more. I mean, it's not a big complaint, but it would have been kind of nice to be able to use those in multiple things to make a little bit more of a variety of items. However, the weapon customization from Resident Evil Revelations 1 is back, and that was really good. I really enjoyed that, as well as trying to figure out... Because some of those items you'll see as Claire and Mora and you can't get them because you have to get them as Barry, but you may have to create a way for them to get it without doing something stupid, and that worked, I thought, really well. Going back to episodic, the other thing that I didn't care about with the way they did the two storylines is you travel the same areas over and over again. Once again, that goes back to kind of the lame environments. So that was kind of annoying. It's just you'd go through maybe one or two areas that were different, but honestly, you're pretty much reversing the same areas back to back in the chapters, and that was kind of lame. And that's really it for gameplay. There is raid mode. Raid mode was really fun. I did enjoy that. It's basically a horde mode. I love that mode. That was fun. As well as the skill trees in this game, I think, are done a little better and are useful, and you kind of have to pick which ones you want. And I suggest highly getting the ones that involve getting your herbs to heal more, because you take damage like a beast from some enemies. And that's it. While I think they nailed the co-op and somewhat of the survival horror aspects, I just don't, it's just kind of mediocre in design and overall everything else about it.
Who's the master of unlocking now, huh? Come on, hurry.
Resident Evil Revelations 2 continues making Revelations seem to be the better survival horror aspect of the franchise, and I wish that they would do that normal and go back to survival horror Resident Evil instead of action Resident Evil. But I'm not going to complain to some extent because I do like 5 and 6, 5 more than 6. 6 has some issues, but anyway, but they just kind of made I don't know. I think it's because it was on PS3 and 360 that they kind of didn't quite push the game and design and environments as much as they probably could have. So with that said, Revelations 2, I'm giving a rent verdict. It's $40, I think, and I think it's $6 per episode, and there's 4 of them, so you can do it that way too. But it's a solid Resident Evil game. I don't think it's quite as good as the Revelations one, but it does create some interesting plot devices for further games, and as long as they can do co-op like they did in this one, I think co-op in Resident Evil might be may be able to work. So that's it for this review. Next review will hopefully be for Final Fantasy Type 0. I'm running out of time for that because I'm really getting psyched for Bloodborne in the coming day, because that comes out tomorrow. So I'm going to be busy probably reviewing that and Type 0 at the same time. That's going to be nuts. So remember to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check out rule3.com daily. I try to post as much news as I can that's interesting. Please support our Patreon if you can. That way we can get reviews out quicker and make the quality of the site and the videos better. And that's it for this review. So until next time, always remember to trust in the rule of 3.